Hello, fellow Gîtes. Well, today I'm going to be talking to Sally and her daughter Belle, who talk about the house that they've been holidaying in for 40 years now. It's been in the family that long. They live in the UK, and so a lot of what we discuss are the frustrations and the benefits of having a second home in France, which you run as a gîte from abroad. So I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the Gite podcast. Brought to you by Gite Guru.
Welcome, Sally and Belle, to the Sheep Podcast. Thank you very much for being on today.
Pleasure.
And I'm very interested in talking to you two because we haven't had many people on so far who actually live in another country and run a gîte in France. So I'm very interested to hear what advantages and disadvantages there are of doing that. But first, shall we talk about the property itself? What do you actually offer your guests? How many bedrooms are there? How many guests can stay here?
So we have a house that we're sitting in at the moment, which is Maison Rose, and it sleeps 14 in. We've got 2 twin rooms and 5 double rooms, and we've got lots of reception rooms and kitchen and a very big garden, which is fantastic. But as we might talk about later, it's also one of the problems slightly. Down here, lovely lawn with a pond, and then a sort of woodland area, and then a smaller house, Maison Vert, which has 2 double bedrooms.
And that's literally opposite on a little lane opposite this house. And the thing I love about this house is that it's almost in a kind of horseshoe shape around a large terrace garden on the upper level, which I assume becomes the hub of where everyone congregates while they're here.
Exactly, yeah. So the courtyard, which has 4 lime trees sort of at one end and a chestnut. So it used to be a big farmhouse. So I think that was the stables over one side of the courtyard, and then I think these would have been living quarters. This is sort of where I think a lot of people hang out, and the courtyard has a lovely terrace where I think a lot of our guests really enjoy.
With an amazing view over the countryside.
Yes.
Because where are we exactly in France?
Tarn and Garonne. The journey to Toulouse, about an hour and 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
North. Then east is Albi, west is Bordeaux. So we're in the middle of that triangle, actually, Bordeaux, Albi, and Toulouse.
And you're on this kind of hilltop village, right at the top of the village. You're kind of on the edge of the
edge of the village. The house was a farm, attached to a chateau, which was owned by the owners of the chateau. Yeah, and the chateau at one moment was owned by Eleanor Aquitaine, and she gave it to one of her children as dowry, and it was more or less in the middle of the village.
And what happens to the chateau? It's no longer here.
There are bits of it. There's a house just further up, and I think that would have been possibly one section of it.
Just the Ambiance, I think.
Yeah.
And the house the farm was turned strictly into a house by the people who had it before my stepmother bought it. So we're talking about 60 years ago.
Okay, so up until that time, it was a working farm?
Actually, it was made up of flats. Oh. So there was a flat that end, and there was a flat down that end, those 2 wings. Yeah. And when the people who bought it before my stepmother did, it was vieux âgé, because it was an old man living in this flat. Yeah. So he got the whole house very cheap, and he lived there until he died, and then the house became theirs.
It's a fantastic system in France that we don't know in the UK or in the Netherlands, where you can buy a property with an old person living in it and wait until they move out or are carried out.
Or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
You talked about your stepmother. This house has been in your family for decades.
In about 1980, they were they were going down to south of France, where they had a house near Saint-Tropez, which they wanted to sell. And so they stayed with some friends who, in fact, lived in this area. And when they arrived, the lady, the hostess, said, we're just going out for a drink with some friends nearby. And they came to this house, opened the door, and fell in love. And so they said to the owner of the house, do you know anything like this? Because this would be completely what they want. Perfect, perfect, perfect. And she said, you can have it if you like. That was the beginning of the story of this house.
And so you first came here as a holiday maker, coming to stay with your stepmother.
Yes, that's right. And they lived most of the year.
Really? Yeah. It wasn't just a holiday home. This was a primary residence.
Yeah. And I noticed my husband took terrific interest in this house. He'd walk around and sort of look at it in a rather interested way. And eventually they had to sell because her husband sadly had a stroke and they had to go back to England and put the house up for sale. And my husband.
Fantastic. So it stayed in the family.
So it stayed in the family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was wonderful. And here we still are.
And Belle, you've been holidaying here then also for 40 years.
Yes, I came here first when I think I was 21. I have to say that the mum's stepmother who had it was quite scary. So actually, my memory is a little bit more overshadowed by being a bit intimidated by her. And she liked things to be just so. Seeing beyond that, I did see how amazing this house was. And then when mum's husband, John, bought it, I came with my kids when they were little.
And when did you start allowing paying guests in? Was that always the case? Or?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, not that long after John bought it, and then John did. John and Mum did a big sort of renovation and changed the rooms and upgraded it and did lots of ensuite with the idea that it could be quite an attractive rental sort of property. And I think the idea was, could we rent it enough to sort of cover its running costs? And so they signed on with an agency, the Private Properties Abroad, and I think you sort of, if I remember right, it'd be more like 2 or 3 guests a year, not many.
That's right.
In quite a sort of modest amount. It sort of stayed at that triple level for quite some time.
We kept it very much a family home. You know, all of my either friends or family, my father, my niece, well, that's a friend actually, but behind again, my father, my mother over there, and practically all the pictures. So it's very much a family home.
And also the fabrics, looking at all the cushions and that's you, isn't it? That was your career. Yeah.
Yes, I had a company called Borderline, and I used the borders a lot. I put them down the leading edge and along the bottom. Yeah. So a lot of the bedrooms have got that one. Most of them are mine.
Well, that was what first struck Frank and I when we came to see the property, was that this isn't just a holiday home full of wonky furniture from a Brokant or from the attic, and threadbare sofas and things that didn't work. And it's an English family home, but with the heat and the cicadas of France. But it does feel like a real family home. And I know that some agents have been slightly less positive about it looking like a family home. But when we came round, we thought that was actually one of the most exciting parts to the house. You've got a very interesting family as well, because I believe you were related to Winston Churchill. So a lot of the pictures here are from Churchill family members. And you get that sense of history when you come here, of a real family home that's interesting, full of fabrics and paintings and lovely furniture.
Well, we were talking about that earlier because you were saying that just now and then people find it a bit too personal.
Well, I don't think I've ever had a guest say, "Oh, it's sort of too personal," but it's something that I wondered if when I did get a property manager from a sort of slightly larger city, she came and said if I was to take this house on, I'd have to get rid of all the curtains, all the pictures, and none of my clients would be interested in this. It would be less personal, more neutral, and less styled by my mum's taste. I think it might mean that a lot of our customers do come from the UK. I think they do respond to it because it is quite an English style.
We have the exact opposite. So we've designed our sheets to be very neutral. As soon as the guests arrive, their suitcases explode all over the place. And if it's like home to them. And this is the exact opposite. But I see this as a unique selling point of what your property offers. I don't see it as negative at all. It's interesting how we can all do it in a really different way. And you get to use the house yourselves throughout the year.
Well, we do, although now, thanks to, frankly, you, the help you gave us, we have got more bookings every year. So that's fantastic.
But it's still a home for your family to come to.
Yeah.
You do still get a lot of use out of it yourself.
Yes, and Mum's grandchildren come, and they take it with their friends now.
Yeah, so there we are over in London, and actually all sorts of things are happening here which need attention.
And what kind of things need attention then? What fills your time?
Well, the pool emptied, and nobody knows why. Twice.
Twice now?
Yeah.
Last year.
Mm.
And then we had to empty it ourselves, actually, because we had to put a new liner in because it got all rucked. And there's a wall which has come down after, or not completely, but it's been badly damaged by a real big storm that was last spring, wasn't it?
It was this week.
Oh, it was this spring, yeah, sorry. Anyway, that's rather complicated because it's underneath the studio. We've got the studio right opposite the house.
Yeah.
And we have painting weeks. And the people love the studio because it's big and spacious and airy and completely wonderful. Yeah. But now, of course, this year we can't go into it because of the wall underneath, which is still damaged and won't be mended till October.
We had a problem with the drains.
Drain. No lavatories there.
So you find that you have to come over in order to deal with big problems as they happen, or
it does feel a bit like that, and I think there are things that we notice, which perhaps the team that we've got here don't quite always notice in the same way. We really want to offer a kind of gold standard treatment for guests. So I think we sometimes sort of worry, and when we get here, we notice things like sort of I don't know, plastic toys are left out on the lawn. I mean, sort of small things. And there's always improvements to make, which I'm sure you know about as well. We haven't really got that here. We haven't got someone who's got the same eye for detail.
So who have you got working here?
We have got 4 cleaners who are all local, and we've just taken on a very young lady who lives quite locally to come and sort of be the sort of property manager, be the person who will greet the guests. She does the welcome basket and sort of organises the cleaning. She's new to doing this. She's got some other properties elsewhere, so it's quite a learning curve for her. Yeah. So we're really hoping that we can support her and that she will kind of grow into it. There isn't anybody who is doing this within our immediate area who is an experienced property manager.
We have lots of clients in the kind of Dordogne and Charente, and they seem to be able to find property managers quite easily, and it's often expats who are looking for work, and as long as you're slightly handy, then it's quite easy to become a property manager, really, and be on call all the time for when you get a block loo or a wall falling down, and then you go and deal with it. But yeah, maybe here it is slightly more rural. So when you haven't got a property manager, then you have to take the responsibility on yourselves to jump in and...
We're on the phone to plumbers and, searching for a new, I don't know, heating engineer or something because our heating engineer has gone off on holiday.
And you share the responsibility between the two of you or more of you?
I couldn't do without that. I couldn't begin. I mean, she does a little bit in that sense. I can't think of anybody in the family and through friends who don't really love it. Yeah. Because it's such a good ambiance somehow. It's just...
It envelops you.
It envelops you.
Because you come down a little lane and there's this big carriage door in front of you, and you open it, and it's like entering the secret garden. You'd had no idea that this kind of green, lush garden and beautiful house is right there for you.
It's so unexpected. Yeah. And so many people who've been here for the first time, they go, wow.
And what else do you have to do from the UK then? So the accountancy?
Yes, we changed our... We did have rather a smart Parisian accountant, and then slightly thanks to you, we re-looked at it, and actually we are now with another. It really has changed the way we do things.
And why has it made a difference?
I think the new accountant will understand that what we're doing better. I think the Parisian one didn't really deal with sort of sheets at this level. And I think the new accountant understands what we're doing, knows what the rules are, and then we classified, and he understood what that meant.
Accountants are brilliant at answering questions, but they're not very good at offering you information. So when there are changes to fiscal law and that you really should be aware of, in communication you do yourselves.
Yes.
And I have to say, of all the clients we've had so far, you have created the best website.
Really?
It enthuses you about the property as soon as you're on the website, but it's also the functionality of it. It just works perfectly. You built that yourself, didn't you?
I did, and we were on WordPress, and I always struggled with WordPress, and I moved to a different platform.
Okay, which one?
Wix. rentals.
Okay.
And it just made more sense to me. And it has also had templates. They seem to match the house better.
Yeah.
And then it will help. I also linked it to Booking Mood, and that all works quite well. I just liked how they set it up, and it was just easier for me. But so I did build it. I did as much as I could, and then needed an expert to kind of polish it.
So in fact, if you look at the business as a whole, you actually are involved in virtually every aspect of it, apart from welcoming guests and doing all the cleaning and changeovers.
I think the rentals do cover a lot of our running costs,
Yeah.
including utilities and including accountancy costs, and obviously pays for the cleaners and stuff. But the garden does push it really to the edges of what, because it is quite big. So although we do a bit of gardening, we have a contract gardener.
And how does it work then if you never actually meet your guests? Do you have much contact with them before they arrive?
I do advertise, and I deal with maybe like 1 or 2 guests every season, but most of them are through an agent, and I don't ever speak to them.
And how does it feel then, not knowing who's coming into your home? Because it is your home.
Rather odd sometimes. They've left such nice reviews.
Yeah.
And if there was a problem, or we would obviously sometimes ring them just to reassure them about something, or to thank them for something special they've done, or whatever.
Yeah.
You ring them up sometimes and say
Yes.
hello. She'll ring on the landline, which I didn't even know we still had a landline, and it rings, and occasionally they pick up and you.
Some of the don't pick up, which is rather a shame, because, you know, if the weather's lousy or something, I'd like to ring them. The trouble is, when the landline rings, nobody ever has a landline anymore, so they don't want to pick it up.
Maybe put a sign on it saying, if I ring, please pick up.
Yes, yeah, exactly. You could do that. Our agent does give us a lot of information, so we do know who the family is, and we know things like whether there are babies or children. And
So your guests are mainly from the UK, and are they groups of friends or are they intergenerational families? Do you often get the grandparents, children, and grandchildren coming?
Very often, anniversaries or
Okay.
birthdays, or we have had weddings. Personally, I'd say no more weddings, thank you very much.
And why is that?
So complicated. They always, it's not their fault exactly, but they do want special things. They want different pots of flowers and different trees, and all the chairs which have to go out, and they want them somewhere else, and so on and so on. And of course, you get so many people. Then they want to dance the courtyard. It's a lot of work.
And earlier you mentioned the art week. So you have an art studio opposite.
One was about 45 foot long. And
Cram full of art books and...
It's got, absolutely. It's got lots of things in it which are very interesting.
And so every year you organise an art week. And so that's, again, very different to having paying guests as holiday makers. So what do you actually have to do for the art week?
Well, it's actually run by a lady from Oxford, who is a great friend of yours. And it's entirely her thing.
Okay.
She does it. She organises it. She gets people. She completely organises it.
And the catering, who does that?
She organises that.
Oh, okay.
she brings someone with her, someone who she knows she can work with well. And she has a vast network. We don't have to do any advertising at all.
Yeah.
She's hugely encouraging. And then the day is very structured, actually, which is what one wants.
Yeah.
You know, you draw with your left hand from 9 o'clock in the morning, and so on through the day. So your day is sort of planned.
Yeah.
Yes.
And have you not thought about extending that to other courses here? Or is it that you've lucked out with this lady?
Well, it doesn't make any money, but they're very nice to have. I mean, it's a lot.
But why does it not make any money?
Well, the reason... well, it doesn't need much.
No.
I mean, it's a really nice thing to have, and it brings new people who come and experience the house. But I can't quite remember what we charge actually. It's like 2,000 or something for the week, and that's all. You get all your tuition, all the food. There's nothing extra. That's based on a sort of, we've sort of figured out what the art facilitation costs and everything, and we think, within conversation with the artist, that's probably at the sort of pushing at the edges of what her network sort of might pay for something like this. Now, if they all brought partners, then we're in business, because then we can charge them for the accommodation and food, not necessarily the art if they don't join in. But if they're all 5, if we have 5, then there are 2 rooms at the top. That'd be 7 artists. It doesn't quite pay for what the artist needs. She brings her husband, so he's taking people for walks and helping doing some catering and stuff. and then the food and the shed. By the time you've added it up, and you make, I don't know, maybe only a couple of £1,000 or something, which is not to be sneezed at. That's great, but it's not enough to think, oh, well, this is such a moneymaker that we would extend it. Yeah. But however, it would be a nice thing to offer because it is the most fantastic place to do yoga, writing, poetry, photography, and we're quite well set up for that with the studio.
Yeah. But it is a completely different kettle of fish, just like you were saying about weddings. The property is used in a completely different way.
Yes, it is. I think the wedding thing, particularly because you get 150 people. We've had about 3 weddings here.
Yeah.
But it has been rather major. And as it's in the middle of the week, and then other people are doing on Saturday, they've got the big changeover.
Yeah.
It can get rather sort of overwhelming.
How did your plumbing cope with 150 guests?
Well, that's a good question. I don't remember it not working.
Okay. And so your objective of having this place is really to continue it as a family home for all of your family. But you obviously spent a lot of time actually running the business. And okay, you'd still have to do all the maintenance if you weren't accepting paying guests. So I suppose there is a kind of overlap there. But how important then is the revenue? What objective in running this place? Is it to try and cover the running costs and the maintenance, or have a bit more money on the side to then invest back into the property, or
that too? I mean, at the moment, there are plans. Well, changing the pipes is going to be something,
right?
And at some stage, the boiler will have to change because that's rather old. Yeah. And also, we want to do some rather major tree work. There should be a fantastic view as you come in, and there isn't at the moment because the trees, there are 3 wonderful trees. That's gorgeous, but there's one too many. And they're 80 feet high at least, 90. In a funny little small area, but they're huge.
But so the revenue, I think we can keep on top of with the rentals. But then when we have like a wall falling down, even though insurance will pay for some of it, it's still then there's €10,000 that needs to, and that's not within the budget really. So that ends up being.
So really, if you weren't accepting paying guests and walls fall down and you need pipes replaced and trees cut, then it really would be quite an expensive property to keep going.
Yeah.
But having those paying guests has really softened the blow.
It does, and it does pay for a majority of the garden because we could shut the shutters and just go and just pay the minimum. But the garden can't be. You can't just leave a garden. It would just end up as a sort of wilderness if it's not sort of maintained. So that is also, I think, one of the problems why, because I think sometimes we have this conversation, well, would it be easier if we didn't rent it to anyone, shut the shutters, and we just come and we don't rent it out at all? And we do go through this exercise, and actually there is a point to having the guests because it does pay for some maintenance and it keeps the garden.
Yeah.
So it helps us keep the house.
And apart from walls falling down and things, what are your biggest costs? So the cleaning team, laundry,
cleaning team.
The cleaners aren't too bad. Actually, the garden is really costs a lot. There's I don't know how many acres it is.
Probably not. Maybe 3-ish.
But that's a lot for a garden.
Yeah, so the garden and cleaning is a sort of the biggest revenue cost, and then
laundry, insurance. Yes, electricity, water.
Yes. And the reason I don't like people coming in the winter is because if you heat it, it's ridiculous because it's a 1970s old German boiler and the radiators are Victorian or something, and it just costs a bomb. If you turn all the radiators on in the whole house, you can blow €500 in a week. Yeah. And I'm going around turning radiators off. She's going around turning them on. So it is, that's the heating is a bit of a problem. The electric, the water, you must come. They're going up, those prices.
So all this time and money that you're having to invest in the property, you still get more than enough back from it as a family.
We do. There are moments where I think, it's like when the pool empties, we get a call saying the pool's emptied. And I think, good God, is this worth it? It's such a headache. And we do talk about it quite a lot.
And it's a headache because you've got guests who are there, and there's the necessity to deal with that problem immediately.
Paying every week, and it's got to be absolutely perfect.
And do you enjoy that aspect of it, of being in this property and thinking, how can I make it even more enjoyable for my guests?
Well, there's sort of two answers. I'd love it not to be quite such a sort of I don't know if it's anxiety exactly, but it's a big thing keeping it going and looking after it and the admin and everything. At the same time, I love it being used.
Yeah.
And it would be really sad if it wasn't used all through the summer just because we couldn't get away because of work or whatever. The fact that this year we've got 10 weeks is fantastic. I mean, that's lovely. And the pool is full all the time, and that's how it should be.
Yeah.
So I do love that. If we just had one person that we could rely on.
We have had some dreams about actually could we do it in the way that you and Frank do it and actually live, with we also own a little sort of garden cottage, and we could move in there. And I can imagine that being such a fun thing to do.
Yes, I think so.
Our life circumstances don't quite sort of fit in with that plan, but I think we would do such a great job.
And there are no grandchildren who would love the idea of living in rural France and a slow life. And
they're coming out. I mean, Cleo's coming for a week, a New Year. 16 of her friends, granddaughter. Yeah, I know, grandson, her son. Absolutely adore. They all love it.
Yeah.
But they've all got jobs, sort of other jobs. And they're London bound. They're all in the late 20s and early 30s. So coming out to the garden. I don't know. I hadn't even thought of that, actually. Do you think any of them would take that?
Perhaps we'll bring it up, see if we can persuade one of them. They have all got careers, so it would be quite a change.
So they all want careers?
They do at the moment, I think, don't they?
Yeah, they're all sort of quite locked in to various things at the moment. But, anything can change. They're quite young.
And what top tips have you got for people who, like you, want to have a second home in France and continue living abroad?
If they haven't bought their Gîte yet, I'd say really think about the area that you're looking at in terms of what attractions there are to the infrastructure. If you buy a Gîte in an area which has already existing a lot of Gîtes and tourism, you may think, well, that sounds like it's overcrowded and I don't want to go there. But the plus side is that it might have some infrastructure in there that you can find property managers, teams which are really set up for this kind of small business, holiday business. Because this area, not so much. And even though I think there are a lot of second homes around here, there aren't a lot of people doing what we're doing just in the immediate locality.
It's a good question to ask an estate agent when you're house hunting. Do they know of property managers?
Because I think if we had a team that we felt really confident, who had our same, who really saw the sort of standards that we would like and understood that, I think this would be perhaps a slightly different conversation. We'd be saying, yeah, go for it, it's fantastic, everything's amazing, what not to love. And there is a lot to love, but it just comes with that slight headache that you really want to provide a really good service, but you're not on site, and you are relying on people who may not care as much as you to sort of help support the guests. That's a sort of frustrating. There's a bit of a tension.
We have some other clients who've got a place as big as yours, and they have the most brilliant property manager who lives next door. It's just happened that way. And he's had some health issues, and I do sometimes think, what on earth are they going to do if he, can't work anymore? It will totally change their business. They're so dependent on him, and what a brilliant property manager he is. And what other top tips have you got? Is France as wonderful as all the TV programs make it out to be?
In my opinion, yes.
Yeah.
Well, this area is lovely. They couldn't be more friendly. You keep finding wonderful. When we were here for 3 months, we found all sorts of people who are sort of artisans in the countryside. And we found bakers, so you buy the bread as it comes out of the oven. All sorts of artisans around and about. And that's very nice.
Lots of lovely local farms who will, milk. There's a lovely, they've got brown cows and you buy freshly unpasteurised milk.
But there's a lot to see and there's a lot to do.
And has it changed a lot in the 40 years that you've all been coming here? Or has it actually stood still in time a bit?
This area used to be, or maybe it's still known as the Forgotten Quarter, and it still feels like that. It feels like, to a certain extent, like I notice that the local farmer, who used to be quite sort of small, has grown and grown and grown. I think the big agribusiness, agri-farming, whatever it's called, is much more visible. Whereas I think there was a lot more small producers, slightly less smaller producers, but they're still there. I just get the sense that there is slightly larger farming.
No, I think it's a really nice area.
And the village here, we saw a sign for, was it déjeuner or petit déjeuner?
Oh yes, it does have a lively community. It used to have a restaurant that closed down, but they do breakfast mornings.
Because when you drive in, especially on a lovely hot day like today, everything's shuttered and it really feels like there are people living here. It's not one of those ghost villages that you sometimes find.
Yeah.
You immediately kind of slow down when you enter the village.
There's a lot of walkers because we're quite close to the road to Santiago de Compostela.
Okay.
And that's not far away. There's quite a lot of hikers.
Final question, what do you think the future looks like for Maison Rose?
Good question. I'm 91, so I am thinking of the future a little bit, but I'm sort of slightly put it off for a bit. I'm just going to go on, or we are just going to go on as long as we can.
What will this be in 5 years? I don't think we can answer that.
But maybe it'll still be in the family in 40 years' time. You're working as a team now, and if that team grows and flourishes, and who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Well, thank you very much, both of you, for your time. And I'm sure that for a lot of people who want to buy in France and start Gîtes, then it's going to be an invaluable source of information and inspiration for them. So thank you very much.
Pleasure. You're welcome.
Welcome to the Gîte podcast. Brought to you by Gite Guru.
The fact that Sally is 91, as she told us herself, and still so actively involved in the running of the property and the property as a gîte is just fantastic. When we were chatting after the podcast had finished, I asked her what her secret is to being so mobile and active at that age. And she answered with one word, curiosity. And she said when she's at the theatre and the curtain goes up, she's excited for what's about to happen. And that's how she leads her life. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. I've had several clients now who are trying to find ways of ensuring that their second home in France is going to remain in the family, that there is both enough animo within the family to manage the property and enough opportunity to earn the revenue to ensure that it pays its way. And I think that Belle and Sally have found a great balance between managing it from the UK, accepting guests, and using the home as their holiday home for their extended family. Their tip to ensure that the area in which you're buying a second home has the right infrastructure is really interesting, and especially how difficult they have found it in a very rural, quiet part of France to find property managers. So I think that is a really good top tip, that if you're going to run from abroad, then you really have to know that there are people in the area that you're buying who are going to be able to help you manage the property. I really enjoyed working with them on their gîte because it was so different. I mean, every client's gîte is different, but it's so different in the way that it is an English family home in rural France, peppered with references to the Churchills, the Sally's background in the interior design. And it's a place that is so obviously really loved by the whole family. If you haven't met us before, we're Gîte Guru. That's Frank and me, Rupert. We run our own gîtes, Le Mas and La Mazette, and when we left our careers in Amsterdam back in 2015 to run these gîtes full-time, they became our livelihood. We had to make the business work. It wasn't always smooth sailing, but through trial, error, and plenty of learning, we've built a 32-week season, 60% of which are returning guests. We started Gîte Guru to share what we've learned and to help others succeed too. So, if you're looking for free tips, insights and inspiration, head to gîteguru.com and subscribe to the Gîte podcast. For ongoing updates, behind-the-scenes posts and relevant Gîte news, including tax changes and industry trends, follow us on Instagram at gîte.guru. And if you're after more personalized support, we offer tailor-made advice around your business, your gîte, its interiors, facilities, and the services you offer, and not forgetting communication and marketing, so telling the story of your gîte and making it visible to your target groups. If you're interested, get in touch for a free Zoom chat about your property, plans, and how we could help you.